Welcome to Cultivate, a podcast by the Branch Community Church. We're committed to delving into the practical questions that our community is asking. In each episode, we'll explore topics that are relevant to church life and faith, offering wisdom, discernment, and biblical perspective into the simple questions that often arise. Join us as we seek to deepen our understanding and grow together in our journey of loving and serving Jesus. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about something a lot of parents wrestle with, how to handle a strong-willed child. Before we jump in, let's define that. James Dobson describes a strong-willed child as someone with a strong drive for independence, leadership, and control. And I did kind of summarize that. In everyday life, that looks a little like a child pushing back, testing boundaries, and really wants to be in charge. If you've ever had a 2 or 3-year-old tell you what they will or will not wear when they're going to school, and they mean it, you've probably seen that up close and personal. And while that can be exhausting, it's not all bad. Those same traits make a child challenging, but when they're older, can be strengths in their life. When guided well, strong-willed kids often grow into adults who are confident, resilient, and willing to lead. So the real question isn't how do we break strong will, but how do we help parents guide it well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so many of you guys know I've got 4 kids, and 3 of them we would definitely categorize as strong-willed. And those of you that know my kids know which ones are and are not. I love the term, instead of strong-willed, I like the term like not agreeable, you know? They're easygoing and they'll go with the flow as long as that's what they want or think, you know?
Yeah.
But the moment there's like a conflict between what you're desiring to do and what they're desiring to do, there's going to be like an argument or a fight or crying or something. And so it's important for us to really, really make sure that people listening to this podcast, you can learn a lot from the mistakes that Arjun and I have made, some of the failures. God has really sanctified us in a big, big way, how we go about it. And so I just kind of have 2 big ideas. So number 1, I would say for all the parents, be reminded to know what the goal and the mission is of your parenting, particularly in relationship to a strong-willed child. And so your goal and mission is not to raise a compliant child who just always obeys every one of your commands. I know that sounds really good theoretical, but that's not the mission. The mission is not to have a bunch of rule followers. The mission is not to win every argument with them, even though that's what a lot of us would like. And the mission is not to just dominate and overpower the child. The biblical mission of parenting is to shepherd a child's heart. And we want to shepherd their heart, moving them towards God by using everyday moments of discipline, instruction to expose the sins that they struggle with, and ultimately to point them to Christ and to cultivate a lifelong trajectory of worshiping Jesus and obeying Jesus. My favorite book on parenting is called Shepherding the Heart of a Child from Ted Tripp. And he says that in that book, this is sort of the thesis of the book, that the heart is the dwelling place of all of our desires, our motives, our beliefs, what we worship. And so our heart always drives our behavior. That's not an idea that he created. That's from the Bible. Jesus said that in Matthew 12, where he says, from out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So our job as parents is never just merely behavior modification. That creates a bunch of legalistic Pharisees. What we want to do is we want to direct them towards Jesus by teaching them, by discipling them on a regular basis. And the truth is that is really, really, really hard work. And so I would just say to all the parents, make sure you solidify that your mission, your objective as a parent is what God says it should be. It's not something else besides that. And the second thing I would say is just to avoid the pitfalls. And these aren't original to me. This is actually from that James Dobson book that you referenced.
Yeah.
How to Parent a Strong-Willed Child. And so the first thing that he says to avoid is we never want to crush the child. And I kind of jokingly say this is old school, and I don't mean to take a slight at like older people who might be listening to this, but it really is. It's like the old way of going about it is sort of like we can see the kids, but we don't really want to hear them, you know? We don't want to, in the words of Ephesians 6, like exasperate our children, where we're always harsh on them, we'll publicly humiliate them. We always have a power struggle where it's very clear that we're very prideful, we're really arrogant, we're the alpha. They can shut their mouth and be told, and they can just do what they're like demanded to do. And even though there's a time to parent in a strong alpha way, the downside of that, Dobson says this, and I think he's right. Dobson says that when you take this approach, your kids will learn to be outward compliant, so they'll obey outwardly, but inwardly they'll resent you. And a lot of kids will hate you for it. And I know some parents I get to hear a parent saying, well, we're not supposed to be liked by them. And I understand that, right?
Right.
However, our kids should know that they're loved.
Yeah.
They should know they're cared for. And so they don't have to like me, because what person likes being told they're wrong? But they do have to understand that I'm coming out of a place of not oppression, but I'm coming out of a place of I care about you and I want to help you. And a lot of times when a child's old enough, if they don't like internally despise you, they'll just rebel. Legalism will always lead to rebellion in every case. The second thing, which is probably more of a common for like younger generations, like my age and down, which is a lot of parents in our church, is we don't ever want to relinquish this God-given authority that God's ordained and given to us. And so what a lot of parents do is like the opposite side of that spectrum, where we're perfectly content letting the child be the one who's the authority inside of the house. So what time we go to bed, what we're going to eat, how we're going to eat, where we're going to go, everything is all about what the kid is going to dictate to us. And the problem with that is God didn't design the home where children dictate to us. Like it's not the equivalent to a teacher, but like a teacher doesn't go into a classroom and the kids in the classroom tell the teacher how to lead.
Right.
The teacher has to be the leader. And so that's not only true in a classroom, it's true in the family. Like we're ordained people that God's called to parent them. And so the way it looks with a strong-willed child is sometimes we're just so exhausted from fighting, we just give in. It's like, I just can't fight anymore. I'm just going to let you have your way. And their little kids are smart, man. The ones that are really stubborn and they're intelligent, they know how to wear you down, Sometimes we're inconsistent with consequences and discipline, which I think one of the hardest things about parenting is consistent discipline. When you say something, you're going to do it. And if you say this is a boundary and they cross that boundary, you're willing to hold them accountable, not sporadically, but consistently. That is really hard. And the reason that's so hard with a strong-willed child is they're like the raptors from Jurassic Park. They're always testing the fence. You know what I'm saying? And they're just looking for you to have a moment where you're tired from work and you're not going to follow through. And then it's like, boom, there's a crack in the electric fence and I can do what I want. And so that's why sometimes they're just hard to fight with. And so what Dobson says is, and this is so counterintuitive because you would never think a kid feels this way, but what Dobson and a lot of parenting experts say is that the downside of relinquishing authority to them is a lot of kids will actually grow up really struggling with feeling unsafe. Because even though a child is behaviorally saying, I want to be the one in authority, they're made in the image of God, and God's instilled in them these objective moral values where they know they're a person under authority. They're not the boss, but they know that they should be under a boss, but they're sinners and they're constantly rebelling against that. And so children who are like told basically they're the parent and they can do whatever they want, they actually grow up with a lot of anxiety. They grow up with a lot of struggles because they know that they should be under somebody and they're not. And so because of that, it's just kind of a challenge in that way. So I would say don't make those mistakes. Don't be overbearing, is sort of the Bible word, but also don't be so passive that you let the child run everything or multiple kids. But Brooke, people know that we're friends and we've been friends for a long time, so I can make this joke. I'm very confident. I do not know you as a 3 or 4 year old, but I'm very sure that you would be categorized as a strong-willed child based on how I know you today. So tell me what that was like in your house and what that looked like for you.
I don't know why you would think that. But yes, I will confirm. I was definitely a strong-willed child. My poor parents, they had their hands full. We laugh now because I felt like I was in trouble a lot. And sometimes it felt like I was in trouble before I actually ever did anything. And it was mostly just to make sure, in case I decided to get unhinged that day, I knew what I needed to do. But mostly I was in trouble about my attitude. Yeah. About what I was saying. And my mom would often say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I actually, as an adult, still remind myself of that on a regular basis. I don't have kids myself, but I spent years working with students of all ages in the school system, through the church. And from my experience as a strong-willed child, I know that we really need direction. We need someone to push back. We need someone to set boundaries, and we need someone to lead firmly. if my parents had just let me run wild, my strong personality could have easily gone in the wrong direction. But because they were constantly correcting and redirecting my energy, I learned how to use my determination and strong opinions for good. Did my parents do everything perfectly? No. Am I perfect today? Absolutely not. But I can honestly say I'm a better adult and a better woman because they didn't just let me be strong-willed, but that they helped me channel it.
Yeah.
And manage those emotions and how I wanted to handle those opinions that I had. And they didn't just let that slide. Bless them. I'm sure they were exhausted for 18 plus years with all that I brought to the table.
I think that's a great way for parents to think about it. That this thing that is frustrating you right now, by the grace of God, if we'll do it God's way, can actually become a blessing to us long term. Because you are not a thorn in the side of your parents as a grown adult woman, probably as much as you were as a stubborn 4-year-old.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just kind of in closing out here, I want to share just a few final, very practical words of wisdom, advice for parents. So like, what do you do if you have a kid that's really strong-willed? I would say number one, to pray. And I feel like sometimes as Christians, we kind of roll our eyes at that. Like, oh, that's the safe way out. That doesn't really mean anything. Pray, that's very ambiguous. But when I say pray for them, here's what I mean. No parent has the supernatural power to change the heart of anybody, especially their own kids. And that is a really hard thought. So that's why if you're overbearing and controlling and you dictate to them, even if they are their behavior is modified in a healthy way, you are not changing them from the inside out. That is a thing that only the Holy Spirit can do. God can take a heart of stone and put it in a heart of flesh. We can't do that. So because of that reality, we come to God with our children saying, God, you have to do this work in them. I'm trying to do my part. I'm trying to obey you the way that you've told me to care for them, and I'm trying to direct them to you. I'm trying to be an example, a testimony. But at the end of the day, God, you have to do this work. And so I would say if you're a parent that have found yourself with a really stubborn kid and you're just really struggling, I would say bring that to the Lord. Remind yourself that God can change them and that you're in it for the long haul. Like you're cooking in a crock pot, you know what I'm saying? Like you ain't cooking in a microwave. Right. So if you could just focus in on that, I just think that would be really good. Bring it before the Lord. 2 is I would encourage parents to be more passionate about your calling to shepherd their hearts than anything else. The most important thing that you will do as a parent is to lead your kids towards Jesus. It's more important than getting your kids to be popular, getting them to go to college, getting them to be really good at a sport or extracurricular activity. All that stuff's good, that's great, but it is not more valuable than leading your kids towards the one that has died for them and risen from the grave. And so because of that, you have to be more passionate about your role of shepherding them than they are more passionate about getting their way. I'm not saying out stubborn them. I am saying that you have to win that battle in your home. That in our home, the direction that we're going to move is to follow Jesus and obey Jesus. And that is really hard with a strong-willed child because a strong-willed child is like, I'm ride or die for me, Right. I'm ride or die for what I think and for what I feel and how I want it to be. And that manifests itself in temper tantrums. That manifests itself in just open defiance. Sometimes, in some of our kids, it's just they'll just cry, just to try to manipulate you, to get you, tug on the strings of your heart, So I would say set clear expectations and boundaries for them. Show them that those boundaries are from God for their good. And if they cross that boundary, you have to have some form of discipline to lovingly correct them and bring them back. So like I said, it's not a battle of the wills, but you have to show them that you are more passionate about doing it God's way than doing it their way.
Yeah.
And so if they've lied to your face, and here's the thing about that is I would be really sure as a parent that when you implement that discipline with a boundary, that it's a very, very biblical, clear thing. So it's like you have violated what God has said, and I'm going to hold you accountable. It doesn't need to be this ambiguous, unclear thing. It needs to be really, really clear. So I think the best example is open defiance. So if it's a 3 or 4-year-old and you're do this thing because I'm asking you to do it, and here's why I'm asking you to do it, and that 3 or 4-year-old is kick rocks, I'm not going to do it. Well, then that's open defiance, right? That is challenging the authority, and then you have to begin to discipline them to help them begin to see it in the right way. And when you have to do that moment of discipline, this is really hard, but try not to do it in your emotions. I've really failed at that. Like you need to be in complete self-control of what you're feeling in that moment. And the posture of your heart is speaking calmly, following through. You're the authority. And there's this thing where nobody loves authority because we're sinners. We're always kicking back against authority on every level. However, the authority of a parent to a child should feel like comfortable and safe because the parent is confident that they're in that position that they're in. So I'm not saying everybody has to do it like this, but this is the way we've done it with the kids. So especially the strong-willed ones who are really stubborn, it's like if we have them and there's some like form of discipline of spanking or timeout or whatever, we would look at them and we'll say, okay, tell me who the boss is. And the strong-willed kids in every instance will resist answering the question because they know what we're hunting for.
Right.
We say, who's the boss? And they'll put their head down. And then it's like, all right, tell me who the boss is. And we basically will say, Jesus is the boss. Like, Jesus is the boss. He's the king. He's the Lord of the universe, not you. And after we ask that question, and we normally try to get them to say that, like, and then after they say it, we'll follow up with another question and we'll say, who's not the boss? And we will make them say, like, whatever kid it is, I'm not the boss. They need to say that. And that's not like, oh, we're going to just spank you until you do it. It's like, we're not going to leave this room until you acknowledge that, because that's the way things are. And then after that, I look at the kids and I tell them, one day I have to stand before God for how I've loved you and served you and parenting to you. And I have an obligation as a follower of Jesus to do this whole parenting thing the way Jesus has told me to do it. And because of that, I have to do it his way. And so I can't do it your way. I have to do it the Lord's way. And God has told me this is the way it needs to go. You've sinned. There's consequences for that. And I want to wrestle with you through those things. And sometimes I know when they were like 3 or 2, I was way over their head. But I just always try to get in the habit of saying those things out loud. So it's like, hey, I'm an authority over you guys, but also I'm under authority to the Lord of the universe, to the one who's died for me and risen from like the grave. So like because of that, we want to do it that way. My final piece of advice is to just not give up. Don't give in. And I know that's really hard for a lot of people, but this is how it looked in our house. The clothes thing is like a great analogy, like who picks out the clothes. And so what we realized was with the strong-willed kid is sometimes there's a way to cultivate it in them. So maybe instead of dictating to them, this is what you're going to wear, be quiet, hush your mouth, we would say, here's 2 choices. You can pick, but here's 2 choices. You can wear this dress or this other thing over here. And that seemed to be really, really good for them. The other thing that we learned to do was like a situation was, it was like we're really intentional of saying bedtime was at a certain time in our house. We know every family's different, especially in our church. A lot of people work graveyard shift and they have to kind of be with their kids when they can. And I understand that. But in our house, we just made a decision that we were not going to center our lives around our kids and our schedules. We were going to acclimate the kids to ours. So if Audrey and I want to hang out at night without kids, just to spend time with each other, we feel like we should have the freedom to do that without being interrupted. And so we were really strict on bedtime. And we had one kid in particular that was really stubborn. They would just come out during bedtime, like at 3 years old and 2 years old. And it was just like a constant battle every single night. And I just remember there was a night where we were just like we're going to ride or die here until we get you to see why we need you to stay inside of bed. And I tell you, I wanted to give up so bad because they were just like a raptor, bro, hitting those boundaries. But the most amazing thing is that kid who was that way, who literally we couldn't get them to stay in the room without coming out 5, 6, 7. Literally, we were staying with a family in Plant City that is he's a granddad, a super veteran, great dad, great grandfather. And I remember he looked at me one night when we were staying with him, and he was like, "I've never seen a kid so stubborn," you know. And so, but finally, it was like the Lord finally broke them and softened their heart. And now, as like this teenager, preteen, they're like stubborn, which stubborn isn't a good word, it has a negative connotation, but they're passionate and zealous and strong-willed about righteous things. And they do things on their own, and it's this beautiful picture of how God has transformed their heart. And so I would say just do not throw in the towel. Don't give up. If you will be diligent and love them and do it God's way when they're young, and even when they're older, it's never too late. Man, God will honor that in the long run of your role as a parent. So don't give up.
That's good. Whether you're parenting or just looking back on being a strong-willed kid, it's about guidance, patience, and helping that determination go in the right direction. Thanks for hanging out with us today and being with us. Hopefully you got something useful, maybe a little encouraging, and maybe a laugh or two. We'll see you next time.